Romance. Hey, it's wonderful. A fact of life. Sexually transmitted diseases, bad news, but also a fact of life. And that's what brings us to today's case. It involves a couple, man and a woman. They engaged in a romantic relationship. She was 55, he was 77. Unfortunately, she came down with herpes. She later found out that he had had herpes for 25 years, never told her about it. She said, wait a second, this should not have happened. I wouldn't have been doing this if I had known you had herpes. And the fact you had herpes and the fact we engaged in a sexual relationship, I was all but certain to come down with herpes. She sued him. Case went to trial. There was a jury. The jury voted a verdict in her favor and also voted that he should pay monetary damages for her coming down with the disease. Okay. Now, what about insurance? Would he have insurance coverage for this? Well, it would be argued that it was a negligent act, and if it was a negligent act, then there would be insurance coverage. But wait a second. This was a consensual activity. They agreed to this activity. But she will argue she never agreed to coming down with herpes, and he knew he had herpes and therefore was all but certain she would come down with it. In view of that, an insurance company will deny coverage, say there's no coverage here because he engaged in conduct that was all but certain to cause harm. That's essentially intentional conduct. There's no insurance coverage for intentional acts, just as if you would hit somebody over the head with a baseball bat. No coverage for that if you intended to hit them over the head. Now, why is this kind of case brought? Well, it's brought not only because the person suffers injury, because they want to be reimbursed for their injury, but because they hope to collect. So a case like this is normally brought only against someone who has the ability to pay. And in this instance, that was the situation. The fellow's last name was Rowland. He owned a beauty supply manufacturer that he later sold to Bristol Myers. He obviously was worth some dollars, and therefore she, in fact, would be able to collect something in the event the jury awarded her money, and the fact the jury did award her money. So we're bringing this case to you today, a real case involving real people, for two reasons. One, it points out the fact that if somebody suffers harm as a result of somebody else's conduct, you do have a claim against them. Also points out, number two, that there isn't necessarily always going to be insurance coverage, but if the person is a wealthy individual, well then, in fact, that person would have an obligation to pay. All right, we bring you these cases every week so you understand how the law works, so you can make the law work for you. I'm David Allen.